the other important thing is to recognize that, and then recognize that the value is in your people. The intellect is in your people. It's not going to come from some, audit firm that suddenly decided that they were great at artificial intelligence, or some, tech consulting firm that decided that they were great at artificial intelligence. The intellectual capability to use AI to transform your business is going to come from your people.
Yeah.
And think about the way that your organization works today, right? At the top of the house, and I've worked in corporate a long time, but at the top of the house, you get a number. Here's your revenue number. Here's your earnings number that you got to hit this quarter. That gets doled out to the next level, and that gets doled out to the next level. That gets doled out to the next level, until there's somebody who's actually accountable for delivering it. And the only way we know how to run these organizations with people who have 40 years of experience in these management styles is, I got to hit those numbers. I can't fail, because all that stuff gets tallied up to the top after the end of the quarter. And every quarter, I got to hit those numbers.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is a little bit different mindset. So your management mindset has to change, because you're going to open up the aperture to be able to fail, right? Because you don't know what the answer. It's not like putting in SAP or Oracle, for your ERP, where 3 years from now I'm going to have this accounting system in place. This is iterative, continuously changing, new technology evolving. So the mindset of that middle manager who's been doing that job for 40 years, in a way, they get the inputs and they have to have successful initiatives to deliver the outputs back. That has to change.
Yeah.
Now, how do you make that change happen, right? It's very, very hard, because even in the way we account for these things, and I'm going to go a little nerdy here for a second, but the way that you implement technology initiatives is it's capital expenditure. So you're going to put in $10 million, and then you're going to amortize it over the course of the next 5 years, 10 years, however long you plan to use the software or the asset. In the age where you're talking about things failing, all of a sudden, if that thing fails, you have to write it off in that quarter. If you stop work on that project, you have to write it off in that quarter. So let's say of that $10 million, you spent $2 million. You were planning on amortizing it over the next 10 years. You've already spent the $2 million. If you stop that project, you have to write it off in that quarter. What ends up happening is that people go, whoa, I'm not taking accountability for that. So these projects, these zombie projects, keep going. And that's another big danger that we'll see as AI starts getting into other parts of the organization and becoming bigger use cases, is the mindset and literally the way that the financial accounting works will have to change.
Wow, there's a lot of crazy things to unpack here. Because first of all, like, you could be the reason that someone, the CEO has to get up on an earnings call and basically say, we just totally missed our numbers because we just lost it. Like, so that's a lot of weight on someone's shoulders. And now if we take that forward one step and even down to the bottom of the organization, right? When you're putting teams together to innovate on AI, if you don't change the way that you're telling them that you're incentivizing them, right? So when you're placing a bet and they execute that bet and that bet fails, if that sticks to them as failure, then what kind of people, you're not going to attract the right people on these teams going forward. So you have to change the way this becomes an innovation discipline, not a management discipline, right? When you're trying to figure this stuff out, you want to get your A players on there. The A players have to know that I'm being judged on my execution and my innovation, not on which of the 10 bets succeeds. Is that correct? And how do you make that shift?
This is you kind of have to decide what kind of organization you are, right? One customer that I've worked with, they created, by using this iterative approach, they created an 18% improvement in productivity. 18% improvement in something that had been completely flatlined because um, the market had matured and it was completely flatlined. So the ROI was not getting there. And they put in an iterative process with the right governance, et cetera. Um, the thing that they didn't address was the 18%. The way they got to it was by understanding the customer holistically and delivering what the customer needed when they needed it. The problem is the president of this business unit, who always got all the marketing spend
Mhm.
and therefore always hit their number, now started getting fewer conversions. And the conversions were happening over here because this is what the customer was demanding rather than being hit over the head with this offer. And guess what happened to the leader of the AI project that got the 18% ROI improvement?
He got 18% more ability to go find a new job somewhere else.
Yes, he got 100% more ability to go find a new job
Yeah.
because this person was a very powerful person. And he said, what's going on with my volumes? He didn't hit his number. The company did better overall. He didn't hit his number. And under the 40 years of experience of how you're supposed to run a company, that was a bad thing. So now you look at that and you go, how do you avoid that situation? Number one, you have to have the vision, right? Then you need to build that coalition where
Mm.
everybody who is going to be impacted is actually on board and they manage how that is going to impact their top and bottom line. And then you go execute. This going and executing 1,000 different things without looking at all of that it's fun. Granted, right? It's fun having like, 5-person innovation team running around building GPTs, whatever. But it's not going to be what's going to change the company and create the impact.
And if you want to win, you've got to have your best people doing this. And you know who I'm talking. Everybody who's listening to this immediately knows they can list who their best people. Like they know who these people are, right? Those
Yeah.
people need to be bought in. They need to be, to your point, that second item, which is that the company is deliberately investing in this. We're giving you the charter to go do this, right? And we're investing in the innovation versus a kiddie table innovation where it's like a bunch of people who are just out there doing a bunch of random stuff, hoping to stumble into innovation. And meanwhile, your competitor is going to crush you if that's the approach you take is kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah. It's a matter of changing the way that you are approaching the problem, right? Not approaching it from a technology or a cool whiz bang thing perspective. But Jeff, the beauty of this is everybody's like, oh, you need to throw everything, our old practices up in the air and not think about how we did things in the past. We got to go the new way, the agile way, change the ways of working, all this stuff. It's not true. The fundamental skills that you need to have to execute this appropriately are already in your organization. Measuring.
Yeah.
Guess
Yeah.
what? Every single person in the organization is already measured. It's just you have to do it a little bit differently going forward. What you described, the incentive structure. How do you
Yeah.
actually incent somebody to do something differently? We know how to do that. There are HR professionals in every organization that their job is to do that.
Yeah.
So, but how do you tweak that a little bit differently, right? So it's not about hiring some big consulting company to come in and do a big $100 million project for you. It's about changing the way that people behave, but with the same skill sets that they have had for 40 years in running the organization.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the secret sauce, is that it's not so freaking secret. Right?
Well,
It's out there.
yeah, and that's what's crazy about this. So, a few months ago, my daughter made me watch all of the Iron Man movies because she was all excited about it. And that's where the super suit metaphor really stuck for
Yep.
me. And what's funny about the watching Iron Man at first, when he first starts playing with that super suit, it's a disaster, right? He's like, it's like shooting off in a million
Right.
different directions. You can't control it. And then eventually when he controls it, there's like a big smile. It's like, hey, I can do this. And there's this feeling like I could always do this. This was natural, right? And so like that was my experience with GitHub Copilot. I mean, I've been programming for 40 years, right? And when I used Copilot and I did it, and suddenly I felt this like I felt like I was like 9 years old again. I'm like, wow, I can do this 100 times faster than I could before, and I always could. It's like in your
Right.
brain. So a lot of what AI is, it's like unlocking that feeling for people, but doing it responsibly, right?
That's right.
Because and doing it responsibly at the individual levels, realizing first of all, AI is not a tightly defined input-output technology. It has hallucinations. They need to be managed, and they can be managed, but they have to be managed. And second of all, I think the bigger point that you brought up is organizationally, this fundamentally changes the way you have to invest to get returns on AI. Because if you send off these innovation teams and they fail and you slap them down, then you're going to kill and the innovation is going to stop. And whereas
Yeah.
if you figure out the right way to create an investment framework in your organization for how innovation is going to happen with AI, things are going to explode and people are going to want to be part of these AI teams.
Yeah.
That's going to be the place where people are going to want to go. And that's good for the business because at its best, AI can unlock orders of magnitude of value.
That's it. So if you are an executive in any kind of business and you see all this stuff going on in AI and you're just like, what the hell is going on? How do I need to change the business? Everything is going to change. The machines are getting smart. Take a breath, right? Number one, everything you need to manage this change is in your organization.
Mm.
It's the way you've done business for however long you've done business with a little bit of a twist. That's one. Number two is you have time. Everything's not changing and everything's not going to transform itself tomorrow. You have time to take a step back and do things right
Mm.
and manage it the right way. So I think those are the two things. And now what you'll see is everybody who's trying to sell you AI stuff is going to tell you the opposite of that. You don't know how to manage in this new world. We need a bunch of 22-year-olds to come and help you do it. Right. And Jen, whatever it is going to understand this technology better than you. And therefore, they'll understand your business better than you. Not true. You understand your business. You've been running it. You do need to change a little bit in terms of how you think about it, but you have the fundamental skills.
Yeah.
The second one is everything's changing overnight. You're going to be out of business tomorrow. 50% of the Fortune 500 or whatever the stat is, 50% of the S&P 500 from 50 years ago is gone, something like that, right? You have time. It's not going to change next year. In 5 years, it will look dramatically different, but the world is not going to change in the next 18 months. So how do you go about making that change happen in your organization without being thrown into this chaos of everything that you read out on the internet and all the stuff that's coming at you? Very, very fundamental. You look at every role in your organization and you say, I have one person doing this. What if they had 1,000 helpers?
Yeah.
What could they do differently? So if you're doing high impact claims in property and casualty, where you have an adjuster who is looking at a case where somebody was injured, how can you improve the quality of that claim? You've got one adjuster running around trying to do it. What if they had 1,000 helpers? How could they serve the claimant much more effectively and have a much better quality outcome for that claim, right? At a much lower cost of actually doing the adjusting. Salespeople. If you had for every salesperson, you had 1,000 people telling them, hey, I looked at all the data and this is the next client you should call on
Yeah.
because of these reasons. And you should offer them this. Think about it from that perspective across every single function in your organization. and it'll become hugely clear where you need to make the bets.